Hello and welcome to the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts, Chris Carter and Abby Schnable, coming to you and answering your questions you've sent to us here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Remember, you can subscribe to the Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com, read all our work there. You can also subscribe to this channel and get all of our Post-Gazette podcasts on the Post-Gazette Sports channel by subscribing to us on your favorite podcasting app or watching us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers, including the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, hosted by yours truly. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, you are getting a chance to taste of one of 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. More on them later. Abby, we got you back on the show, and we've been kind of waiting around to see when Pitt football would make some big recruiting moves, and they did make some big recruiting moves this weekend, landing 5 commitments. And we're going to get to that because that's our first question that we have here today. But it's nice to see some movement on the front so we can start to get some answers here instead of trying to say prospectively this is who they could get as commitments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my phone was buzzing because I've got Pat Narduzzi's notifications on. I've got Pitt football's notifications on. And so it felt like it was pinging every 5 seconds between that and Pitt track and field competing this past week. Like my phone was going a little crazy, and it was kind of nice to be back into the swing of things a little bit. But, we know of 3 of the 5, and that leads us to the question.
Absolutely. The question comes from Bill. Who are the 5 new recruits Pitt football got this weekend? Now, as I wrote about in our Friday recruit report last week, I listed out a top 5 players as far as how rivals ranked them in their prospect ranking system of players who were scheduled for official visits in the month of June. Now, one of those top 5 players was already a commitment in Tony Kinsler, running back from Florida. He is actually the highest ranked of the 3-star guys that were on their visit lists. But there were 5 other commitments, and as Abby said, we know 3 of them. One of them revealing themselves actually earlier today. We're recording this on Monday. So let's go through who these people are. First, you have tight end Max Hunt from Tampa, Florida. He's a 6'5", 210 3-star prospect that they were able to get to commit over the weekend. And Jakirian Turner, from Florida. He's a wide receiver, 5'10", 170, and also a 3-star recruit. Both had a 5.5 rating on Rivals as far as their point system. But both of these players kind of ranking like alongside like guys like Bryce Yates and guys that they've already, and Shep Turk, guys that they've already gotten so far. These are 3-star prospects, like guys that have decent upside, can work out. But then the third one that they got was another 5.5 guy who's a 3-star rating, and that's Julian Anderson. And he's interesting because he's a 6'4", 215-pound guy from New Jersey, and he plays wide receiver, but he also plays defensive end. And it looks like that's what Pitt's getting him for, is the defensive end position. And a person with 6'4" size, that kind of length, that's someone that could be interesting on the defense here. But Abby, there's still 2 spots out there, and we know that Pitt had a line of people that were showing up this past weekend as far as their visits, and who was coming in. There were, of the 4-star guys, there was one person who was a 4-star guy who was coming in on this past weekend, and that was Ezekiel Marcelin, an inside linebacker. And he's actually the highest rated 4-star guy they had coming in June. But you look at these names, what is the impression you get from just the positions that they're hauling in?
I think it's looking at the 3 guys that we kind of know, I think it's interesting that you recruited 3 guys that all played wide receiver. Because while Max Hunt's coming in as a tight end, he was a very large wide receiver when you look at it. Jakirian Turner's coming in as a wide receiver, and like you said about Julian Anderson, he's flipped. And I think that shows that, one, Pitt is really trying to add versatility to its roster. They don't want guys who just are really good at one position. They want guys that are going to be able to do different things. And I think that's beneficial for any football program, but especially where Pitt is at right now, trying to grow. If one of your big name guys at a certain position goes down and you need to reach further down the depth, even digging into the other positions, maybe that's what you got to do. The other thing that I think this shows is that they're really prioritizing guys, offensive guys that kind of fit into Cade Bell's system. When I look at Ja'Karian Turner, 5'10", 170 pounds, and he's really known for his speed. Like, he's a very quick guy, and that's what Cade Bell's system is all about, is being fast paced, trying to score fast, score early, and that's what Ja'Karian Turner really adds. I'm intrigued by Max Hunt, because when you compare the Ja'Karian Turner and Max Hunt, both were wide receivers, and while Max Hunt is becoming a tight end, just their size difference cracks me up. But again, that's a guy, Max Hunt, with 6'5", 210. That's a guy that's going to be able to make a difference, whether that's blocking or scoring for Pitt, whatever he's doing. And then, Pitt prides itself on defense, and Julian Anderson, lead receiver, lead pass rusher, and for his high school team. That's a guy that's going to be able to come and make an impact, whether that's in practice or when he gets out on the field.
Absolutely. And also, I want to point out, Tony Kinsler's also a kind of more of an all-purpose back too. So more to your point, that's a guy who can play running back, but can also play slot receiver. And he played a lot of slot receiver in his state championship game in Florida this past year. So they certainly are looking for versatility. That's a great point of observation by you. I think that's certainly something that they're trying to do right now, but they're trying to figure out a lot of things on offense. I think that they're still looking for what their identity. I think they get a theoretical perspective of what their identity is supposed to look like, but theoretical and applying it on the field are two different matters entirely. We will see. We'll keep you up to date at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on who these two final commitments were from this past weekend. And there are still plenty more players and prospects coming through on the next few weekends here in June as Pitt tries to complete out its current commitment cries. It currently now has 9 commitments to it right now, and I believe it ranks 51st according to Rivals in the country in college football. Let's move on to another question. This one coming from Randall, and it asks, how did Pitt do in the National Track and Field Championships? Abby, you've been having your eyes close on this for a minute.
Yeah, never thought I'd be someone tuning in at 10:40 p.m. on a Thursday night to watch a 4x4 relay, but there I was last week. Pitt had 2, I'm going to say groups, 5 individuals competing at track and field. You had I can never pronounce her name properly, but Ilse Staganga, she's from the Netherlands, and she competed both in the long jump and in the heptathlon, which the heptathlon is crazy. If you're not familiar, it's 7 different events, ranging from the 800 meter to the high jump, like javelin throws in there. Like, it's crazy. And then the other 5 come from, the other 4 come from the 4x400 relay. That's Malik Ricketts, Nigel Hussey, Stephon Brown, Devin Nugent. I wrote stories about both leading into the event. So make sure you check those out on Post-Gazette. .com, or whatever our website is, you know where to find it.
Post-Gazette.com. Yep.
Thank you. But so the 4x4 relay team came in, competed first. They did not make it out of the first round. They posted a time of 3:08:44. Finished 20th out of the 24 teams that compete, which is, is still your top 20 in the country, which is pretty impressive. But they knew they had a hard battle coming in. They scored a 3:03:97 heading into to qualify for nationals. And they were pretty sure that if they were going to make it to the finals, they needed to cut off down to 3:01. Instead, they went up to 3:08. But still a great feat. And then when you look at Ilsa, she finished 20th in the long jump. Not her best performance, but still good. And then she was 22nd in the heptathlon. But even more important on that, what I thought was cool, was that she PR'd on the 200 meter with 24.72 seconds. And so while none of them were, top 5 or anything, it's still, Pitt brings in a couple of athletes each year, and for them to, just get there is a huge feat. So I'm sure they're happy and already back to how can we do better next year.
Absolutely. It'll be very interesting to see how they do there. We now move to Shannon, who asks an interesting question similar to, I guess, track and field, but just about Pitt athletes in general. Shannon asks, does Pitt have anyone who can make it to the Olympics Of course, the Paris Olympics are coming up in a few weeks here. Abby, this is not a question that I'm actually familiar with to answer. I've been so focused on Pitt football recruiting and other things here on the scene. What do you know about Pitt's chances of getting anyone in the Olympics?
Swimming and diving has a lot of opportunities.
Okay.
I do want to shout out real quick. Serena Gray from volleyball was up in the mix for the volleyball team. She did not make the Olympic team, but she was in the mix. But yeah, right now, I haven't dived into a lot of the sports yet, just because it's just now trials time. But when you look at swimming and diving, the American Olympic trials are this weekend, and Pitt has 2 divers, 3 swimmers competing this weekend. For diving, you have Cameron Cash and Dylan Reed, who have been very decorated, not only this past season, but even looking farther back. And swimming, you have Jerry Chen, Claire Jansen, and Adam Mahler. The cool one there is Jerry Chen is a North Allegheny high school alum, so not only a Pitt student, but a Pittsburgh native. And so they're all competing this weekend for a chance to make that Olympic team. Swimming's hard. There's 700 something athletes competing this weekend for a spot on the Olympic team. And we'll see. They'll be tuning in. But the other thing is there's actually already a swimmer that's made it on an Olympic team, not the American Olympic team, but she's made it nonetheless. So Pitt actually has 10 other international swimmers and divers that are competing, either have or will be competing in their country's Olympic trials. But one of those will become a 2-time Olympian this summer, Jayla Pina. She competed in Tokyo for Cape Verde, and she has qualified for Paris as well. So at minimum, Pitt will have one athlete competing, not in the red, white, and blue, but nevertheless, it's still cool. I'm sure there will be maybe a few more. If not, I'll be keeping tabs on it, and we'll be updating you as we get closer and closer to Olympics.
Well, thank you very much for that, Abby. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to seeing your reporting on that part of things. Let's move along to our final question of the show. This one comes from James, and James says, I saw a report that UNC is leaving the ACC. Is the conference about to break apart like the Pac-12? And this comes from another sourced report of people saying that such and such university wants to leave the ACC. We already know about Florida State and Clemson. They have lawsuits currently, going against the ACC to try to break out of their contract, to get out of the conference to go wherever they want to go. UNC hasn't filed a lawsuit to what we've seen yet, but if UNC's talking about leaving, if this report is true, then it would lend itself to another major program wanting to leave the conference. But Abby, as you and I were talking about off the air, there's this whole thing called a contract that, as a TV contract, that binds all ACC schools to the conference through 2036. We are talking about 12 more years of doing this. Now, here's the thing. At that point, maybe we get to that point in 12 years from now and the ACC is disbanded. But given the fact that college sports has changed like 1,000 different ways in the last 4 or 5 years, who knows where college sports will be at that point. And I get these questions, and look, I get it coming from Pitt fans, especially, who are just like, there's a lot of Pitt fans who are still distraught and miss the Big East days, because those were some awesome days for them, for the university in basketball, and they missed the Big East tournament and everything there. And they just started to get home in the ACC, won an ACC championship in football. Finley's so excited to hear about this. He's running around Abby's living room right now. It's so amazing. But Abby, I wanted to get your thoughts on, is this something that is like an imminent thing to worry about? Like, because when I read this stuff, I was just like, yeah, but you're gonna file this lawsuit that's not gonna get you anywhere, and we're gonna just still be having this conversation this time next year.
Yeah, I mean, so first, there's 2 aspects that I look at. Is the first is the contract. That's going to be really hard to get out of, and even if you are getting out of it, you're likely paying a lot of money that most schools really can't afford. The other thing I look at it is I don't really see the conference breaking apart, even if some of these teams like Florida State, UNC, are able to manage to get out of the contract, which again, I don't see being likely. But here's the thing: is that when the Pac-12 dissolved, there were schools, a lot of those schools that wanted to join the ACC. We saw the ACC expand. We will see 3 new teams this upcoming season in SMU, Cal, and Stanford. And that's why I don't really see it breaking apart, because even if the UNCs of the ACC leave, there are schools that want to be in the ACC. And sure, does it maybe take away some of the sparkle, for lack of a better word, of the conference when you lose a team like Florida State or UNC? Absolutely. But at the same time, they're bringing in good programs. Like, and that's the thing, is the Pac-12 wasn't, when the Pac-12 dissolved, it wasn't like, it was, first of all, it was sudden. Second of all, it was, teams weren't like, I want to join the Pac-12. Teams want to join the ACC. And I think that's the difference here. And so even if they're able to leave, I don't see the ACC going anywhere. Maybe it's not as highly regarded because it's not big names anymore, but it's still going to be a top conference in the country no matter what.
Look, I get the feeling of, anxiety from Pitt fans or ACC fans about the state of things. The ACC is clearly, as far as the favorites go, is the 4th favorite conference. You look at how we covered here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about how there was a disparity in ACC teams' production in the NCAA tournament and ACC teams' respect as far as getting space in the NCAA tournament. And that's just on the basketball side of things. It certainly appears that way, that it's not getting that kind of respect. But I also think that the ACC, like you said, still has plenty of programs, plenty of talent coming from it that are producing at high levels. And here's the other thing: with the expanded college football playoff that's going to be happening this upcoming season, there's a lot of opportunity there where, if, like, let's say the ACC makes a run in there, not saying win a title, but let's say some ACC programs, Florida State was undefeated this year, and let's say if they didn't lose their quarterback, what did they do last year? Well, what would they have done? What would they do this year if they have another run like that, or Clemson has a run like that, or any of the ACC programs, and they get a couple big stage playoff wins in college football? That kind of stuff can help, and maybe it helps the revenue down the line. Now, is this to say that this isn't heading towards just a couple or a few super conferences 20 years down the line? No, I don't think we're stopping that from happening. But as far as like the next 5 years or even 10 years, I think the ACC is still going to be alive and well. The question will be, if the conference wants to live past this current TV contract, what is it going to do to combat the things that it's been up against? And that is a question that we don't have an answer for right now.
Absolutely. Like you've mentioned before we really dove into this question, it's college sports is changing every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Keeping up with it is a job within and of itself. And, we're going to see a lot of changes in the next year. We're going to see a lot more changes in the next 12. And so, hopefully questions will get answered. Hopefully the ACC isn't going anywhere, but the one thing that is constant in college sports is that it's changing.
Absolutely. She's Abby Schnable. I'm Chris Carter. Read both of our works at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find us here every Tuesday for the Pitt Mailbag Show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily content that comes out from all of our Post-Gazette sports writers. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Thanks again for everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week right here on the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.